excited to have you here today.
After 9/11, we started using military language to describe cybersecurity. Everything was about cyber war, about the enemy, about the attacker, about, think of the words that we use that are militaristic, okay? Everything is the language of war. We're focusing on enemy adversary, and it constantly activates our nervous system. We live in this hyper-vigilant state. So the part of our business that focuses on incident response, they probably have it the worst, but the accumulation of adversarial experiences that we can't win causes us to detach and self-protect, and that's the equivalent of a freeze response. So I'm going to talk, in nature, Dr. Peter Levine, who wrote the book Waking the Tiger, anybody familiar with this? It's a book about trauma, about handling trauma. Comes from my chaplaincy background where I worked at the VA, and I did a lot of work with, obviously with traumatized veterans. But in this book, he talks about nature. How does this work in nature? Because if you take a look at a herd of gazelles who are out in the middle of the steppe, and they're tending to their young, they're grazing on the grass, they're warming their bodies in the sun, and then a twig snaps. And you see all their heads go up. And they start sniffing, their body tenses, getting ready to run. And they sniff the air to see what direction is this coming from, right? They're getting ready to fight, if necessary, or flight, and get out of there. One of the things that happens is if that flight or fight response doesn't work, the option is to drop and play dead. That's freeze, right? The reason why that works, that's usually or very often a successful strategy, is a tiger is less likely to eat something that appears dead. That's good. And it sort of acts as a numbing exercise for the gazelle, so they don't feel it as much if they get chomped. A definition of trauma that I really like is that when your flight or fight response is activated but doesn't work, that's when you are helpless in the face of a threat, and that's a freeze response. That's when we go into freeze. Now, if we were a gazelle, we would, every time that activation happens, we would also have a way to deactivate our nervous system. We'd have a way to calm it back down again. Once it's up and heightened, it has to have a way to come back down to a more relaxed but alert state. And if you were a gazelle, if we were all gazelles in this room and I was going to have you practice the gazelle means to relax, we would all stand up and we would shake out our bodies. And if you watch a gazelle do this, they start muscle twitching, and the muscle twitching kind of starts up at the neck and it moves down the body all the way down into the hind quarter until they've restored their activated nervous system to a more relaxed state. That's how they stay healthy. That's how come gazelles don't die of a heart attack just because they're being chased by tigers every now and then, right? But we don't do that. Human beings, have you ever heard anywhere in your career, suck it up, Buttercup? We are pros at going into a highly activated state and staying there. We've become so used to it. It's something that Dr. Gabor Mate talks about in his new book, which I highly recommend, called The Myth of Normal, where we have become so acclimated to this high level of stress that over 20% of the United States today has had an experience with mental illness. This is the cost of being in a completely activated state all of the time that isn't being resolved. So, it kind of doesn't work If you're in a conference room and things are really tense, and then once the meeting is over, you stand up and start twitching, right? That's not going to go over very well. It also takes us offline if we go off and say, I need a massage, or I need to get a drink, which is what a lot of us do. We reach for any number of unhealthy coping mechanisms, including pharmaceuticals. And our doctors are pretty willing to give that to us, but it's not working. And those additional stressors that cybersecurity people have, in addition to what the rest of the normal population, that 20% mental illness, 67% of the cybersecurity professionals that VMware interviewed when we did a survey last year have self-identified as burned out. And of those, 2/3 are looking to get out of the business altogether for good. So here's 4 boss tips to help you maintain the equanimity. Boss, B, is boldness. A bold person, the definition I'm going to use today, is a person who knows who they are. It's a person who stands in her truth, even in the midst of the swirl. That's not that easy to do. It takes a ton of inner work. I was a chaplain before I realized I didn't do it. Optimistic. I'm known as the optimistic one, believe it or not. So as long as we're not running from the tiger, how we frame the events of our day determines our emotional response, okay? And language is a huge part of this. Optimism and language go together, but there's more to it. Your emotional state is really made up of the language you use, your physiology, how you hold yourself, how do you breathe, right? How do you move? But we have to look at the language piece. Because we use the language of war so much, we have to sort of be mindful about the way we frame things for people. And our optimism basically can make a gigantic difference. It's the difference between saying something's a problem and something's an opportunity, right? I've had my successes and I've had my opportunities. Third, S, the BOSS. The first S is savvy. We've already talked a lot about savvy this morning. Anita touched on a lot of it, and so did Keon. I like defining savvy as the ability to make good judgment calls. But it includes wonder, curiosity, engagement, being fully present in the moment, asking great questions, gathering information from multiple sources, and then not postponing the decision, but getting to the point where you know you can make the decision. Okay. A savvy boss knows her team, she knows how they perform best, and has built an organization that plays to people's strengths, their diverse perspectives, and their viewpoints. When it comes time to making big decisions and solving big problems, a savvy boss will draw upon multiple perspectives. That is the beauty of having the diversity and the inclusion that we're all seeking in our workplace. We'll make sometimes, if you ever take a look at technology fails, Google technology fails sometime and see the list of the technology failures that we've had over the last 20 years. They are breathtaking. Multi-billion dollar write-offs because the organization or the population of people who were going to be served by a new innovation were never consulted on the product's design. It's a super interesting list. So that's something to take a look at. So asking those questions from diverse sources, it's so important. That's what savvy is. And the power that this kind of presence, that a boss who walks in the room and says, I want to know what you think about this situation that I'm dealing with, and I'd really like to know what you have to say about it, and stays fully present without thinking about their other 7 businesses and everything else that they have going on in their life while you're talking, is hugely impactful. Okay, the last S. I call this self-respect. And there's 8 major areas of your life besides work that deserve your full attention, right? And it's a sign of self-respect to put your energy into all of them. Your physical and emotional health, friends and family, your relationship with money, your growth, your mission and work, your relationship to the divine, your contribution and celebration. The way I deal with this, and it was game changer for me, is in each one of those areas, I created a compelling, juicy goal. The one that I couldn't ignore. The one that would compete with the goals that I'm so used to making for work. I'm going to be in the best physical shape of my life. My next birthday is going to be number 70. I'm doing okay, right? But it's something that I made it a priority. My family, my relationship to the divine, all of those areas of my life deserve my full attention. I don't live to work. I work to live, right? That is what self-respect does. So, all of these things, I'm going to wrap up now, but all of these things, using your language, getting on top of the adversity, focusing your attention on the things that you want in your life, will help you with dealing with the adversity that's just part of our job. And you can be boss. And remember to sigh.